So we're going to go ahead and start this special called Operations Committee meeting to order. We have a few people joining us via Zoom, so let's just see who that is. We have Mr. Board Member, Mr. David Stribinger. Okay, and also I'd like to identify who's in the room for Mr. Stribinger's sake, because not everybody is on Zoom, and so he will know who is here. So why don't we just kind of go around the table. We can start with Ms. Cartledge.
Wendy Cartledge, present.
Robert Otting, Chief Operations Officer.
Denise Unruh, Nursing Coordinator. Karen Stoddard, District Nurse.
Ingrid Boatwright, Board Member.
Robin Cushionberry.
Randy Majors, Facility Service Manager.
Ed Miller, ABM Maintenance.
Okay. And let's see if we have someone else join us. Would the person on the iPhone please identify themselves?
Yes, it's what.
Okay, welcome, Mr. Smith. All right. And Candace has now joined us. Great. All right, wonderful. All right, let's go ahead and start this meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. You all stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. All right, so first thing we need to do is to approve the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda.
Mr. Smith, are you going to second that? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, 2-0-1. A vote not cast, Mr. Smith. Okay, public comment, Ms. Cushionberry, public comment.
Actually, I'm talking, and my phone was
Or my
muted.
public comments?
Excuse me.
Mr. Smith, we need to move this meeting along, so I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you said. There was no response, so we continued. I'm sorry, are you having technical difficulties?
Apparently, I hit my mic and it didn't work. So, but no, yeah, I'm not having. That's so much that I'm having technical difficulty. I thought my mic was on and it was not. So I was talking when you were moving pretty quickly. I mean, I guess we're in a massive rush today. I'm not sure, but it was just the fact that I was talking and the fact I was talking and my phone was muted. That's all. That's the only problem was. Yeah, you didn't give me a chance. So
How would you like to vote?
Actually,
Okay, so that's a yes, so it's unanimous?
No, it's not a yes. For actually, I had a question in regards to the agenda. I have a question. I have a question regarding the agenda.
Go ahead, Mr. Smith, please.
My question is in regards to these decisions on use of facility. That's not what I requested. The question was the process of the use of facilities.
So, Mr. Smith, on the agenda it doesn't say decision on use of facility, it says discussion. So the process can be part of the discussion. Okay, any other objections?
Let me find out.
Okay, hearing none, let's re-vote on the approval of the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, that's unanimous. Ms. Cushionberry, any public comments?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so let's move on to OE 8.1H, Maintenance and Custodial. Mr. Otting.
Okay. If you'll pull up that first page, and actually we're talking about maintenance and custodial, and it's actually 8.6.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's what we had on the agenda, but it's 8.6 for custodial maintenance.
Okay.
And the OE 8.6 just states ensure that facilities are clean, sanitary, and safe, and that's what we're going to be addressing today. This interpretation of this OE has been submitted to you previously, but since it's our first time using it, I'll just go over it quickly. Am I clear, Mr. Distributor, Mr. Smith, to you guys out there? Am I loud enough?
Loud and clear.
Okay, great, thank you.
Quick question. You said that the OE on the agenda was a different number?
Just a typo.
Yeah, it
It's
still
a
says,
typo.
it still says custodial and maintenance, but it's at 8.1 and it's 8.6.
Well, I'm wondering for FOIA rules, should we have to revisit that, being that even though being that it was a typo, well, we have to revisit that because that would not be on the agenda properly. Maybe we should have changed that before we agreed on the agenda.
Okay, I see Ms. Ingrid, Buttwright's hand is up.
We can also just amend the agenda, just say 8.6, just needs 2/3 majority, so
You have to make a motion for that.
if you want to.
Sure.
I move that we amend the agenda to reflect the typo and change from 8.1 to 8.6.
I have a question.
I will second that. Mr. Smith, you have a question? Is your hand up? I'm sorry, I didn't see it.
No, we were talking right now. I know that was something that you wanted at the moment, but I'm concerned if will we be in the will we be within FOIA rules and regulations if we change that with it not being a emergency, a certain emergency.
Yes. Okay.
You only need emergency circumstances if there's public action being taken.
And the title of the OE is correct on both documents, so you're in compliance.
So let's go ahead and vote. All in favor in amending the agenda? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, let's continue, Mr. Otting.
Right, so since this is our first time going over this OE, I'm gonna kind of go through the interpretation, monitoring indicators, and then we'll go through the actual report. So as you can read there, the interpretation, I'm gonna just read it. We understand this component requires us to effectively manage our maintenance and custodial contractors. Evaluations should be completed using visual inspections, surveys, and reports from each contractor. The goal is to ensure that facilities are clean, sanitary, and safe, which of course matches up with the board's OE 8.6. So the monitoring indicators that we said we're going to bring forward is proof that we have an active preventive maintenance program, that we have a functioning work order system, that we have positive principal survey results from the schools, and survey that includes the teacher's voice through teacher groups, and a positive contract scope of services review. So we're, as part of this OE, saying we are in compliance because an active preventive maintenance program is running through the use of PM Direct. That's our software program. School Dude is our work order system, and it is functioning as a work order system for the school district. And just so you know, my motto there, of course, is when in doubt, put in a work order, and we hold to that. It works very well. We did receive mostly positive survey results with a 63% response rate from principals. We did reach out to a teacher forum to complete survey for maintenance and custodial performance. And a scope of service review was held with ABM Maintenance on 9/8/2021 and ATS for custodial on 9/9/2021. And you'll notice that the survey that you're about to receive is ended in August. This OE was scheduled for September, but we just got pushed further and further off agenda, so we're just now able to report. So some of this material, just consider that it was done in August is when the surveys. So if we can go on to the report, we're going to start, and we did introductions earlier, but I'd just like to say, you know, Brandy Majors introduced herself. She's our facility service manager. That's a new position that she has taken on that will be over maintenance, custodial, and grounds. So that's why Brandy is here. Brandy was the office manager for operations, and before that, she was the office manager for maintenance. So she, and I know there's some topic of having some work order questions. Brandy is here for those, and so is Mr. Ed Miller, that's the director of maintenance. So we get into the report. We're going to start with just some good pictures of projects being done, and I just thought this was interesting that in the last quarter we did actually have to replace the evaporators for 3 schools for walk-in coolers or walk-in freezers. So there you see Beaufort Middle, Red Cedar, and Bluffton Elementary. Next one, just to remind everybody, we did have to deal with Hurricane Elsa, which had the biggest impact on Port Royal Elementary and also Beaufort High and Beaufort Elementary School. The majority of the work at Port Royal Elementary is completed, but there is still a couple, I believe, an ironworks small piece that needs to be done, and there are still a couple pieces that we're working on that have not been completed since that hurricane. Go to the next one. I'm showing just one project for South Abroad and one project for North Abroad. The project for South Abroad is the Hilton Head Middle School bus lot, where we expanded an area that they were parking in the mud and kids were having to walk through the mud, and smooth that out and put gravel down for the bus to park on. And North Abroad is a similar project where this is an asphalt apron that was done for the new propane fueling station for propane buses. And with that, we're going to get into the meat of the items, work orders. So if I can, I'd like to kind of go through some of our conversations about work orders and just save questions for the end. Because in all, the kind of the way this is laid out, there is a story behind all of it. One of the things that had us start to look at this is there was just a feeling that maintenance was a little behind this year. And what I mean by that is that at the start of every year, there is chaos in maintenance. So the teachers come back, we're bombarded with work orders, and it's constantly trying to catch up. It just felt like this year that it took longer to catch up. And what you're going to find, and I'll kind of forecast what you're going to see coming up, is the survey results for maintenance are lower than normal. So that feeling and having the survey results lower kind of had us start looking into what's the cause of this. And we saw, several items went around between Brandy, myself, and Ed about what could be the cause of it. And we started looking into the data on the work order numbers. And a lot of the things we thought were either not completely clear or didn't pan out completely. But there was one item that did show up clearly. And that is that the amount of effort that maintenance has had to put in for COVID is about the equivalent of 2 full-time employees. And what maintenance has not done is receive any additional workers or stipends of any kind because of COVID. And what maintenance has taken on, and like usual, when asked, they do what asked, is we turned our warehouse into a distribution center for COVID supplies, which we never had to do before. So supplies are brought in, they're distributed from here. We're doing some things like we buy the sanitizer spray in bulk, 55-gallon drums. And actually with a, you have to add, it's in concentrated factor, and it has to be mixed with water and then put in the bottles. And so that's done at every school. Every time a maintenance tech visits the school, they stop by, see if those bottles need to be filled, distribute those bottles. So all that equated to the equivalent of 2 full-time workers. The question here is that so since we didn't add anything to it, it's really considering the loss of 2 full-time workers. And the question really for us is, all right, is this something we need to think about adding additional workers for maintenance, or is this a blip in the road that's only temporary and we can get through it and then continue on, or is it something long-term that we're going to keep going with? And then do we need to think about looking at adding additional people for that that service that we didn't have before. So that was some of our thoughts. One of the things, if you'll go to the work order summary, that I'd like to point out is that if you start with February 18 to August 18, you see work orders with PMs was 12,029. That's pre-COVID. That equates to, and that's a 6-month period, so that equates to about 2,000 work orders over the 6-month period. You move up August 2018 to February 2019, that's just before COVID, again, 12,198 in 6 months, which is a little over 2,000 per month. And then after the incoming of COVID, and we're still in school, you see a jump. Now we went to 14,718 in the number of work orders, which is just under 2,500 per month.
Didn't COVID happen in March of 2020?
March of 2020.
March of 2020.
Did I have my, okay,
You're just about a year early.
I'm a year early.
That's okay.
Feels like we've been in it since.
It seems like we've been in it for years.
That is my,
Yeah.
my mistake.
You started in February.
You're seeing the jump in 2019 to September, and then it continues into September 2019 to February 2020. And then so February 2020 is when the COVID's full time, and you're seeing a drop, a pretty large drop. And then the next month, when you're actually in between, you start the hybrid model, and that's gone to even further, where you're only getting about 1,500. And then come to this month, you're jumping back up to that pre-COVID numbers of 14,291, because we're full in school, or by the last time we were fully in school, those numbers have jumped right back up, are close. And you got to realize that that's March to August. And in March, we were still in hybrid, and you're just getting a little bit of the August time period, we were fully back. That's going to play off when we look at some of our other numbers later, is that we're tracking to have a pretty big increase in work order numbers this year, even though we're just seeing the beginnings of it, because we're only a couple of months in. We go to the next slide. So this is one thing I know that Mr. Scrivenger likes, and I like to talk about, is just to track our overall progress, how we've done with our total number of work orders. And you see that we peaked in FY 2019 and we dropped to, and that's fiscal year 2021. So that's only through July of this year. That wouldn't count on what it looks like we're seeing as the big increase that's occurring now. So if it continues to occur like we think is going to happen, and it continues through the year, your work orders are going to jump back up to FY 2019 levels, or in that, somewhere in that area, maybe a little higher, maybe a little lower. And so on the next chart of total work orders per worker per year, you're going to have that same slight bump up. You'll see in FY 2019, it wasn't too much higher, but that's about where it's going to go back to, because we haven't changed our number of workers. So we go to the next slide. So total of square feet per year, there's a slight increase in total number of square feet, and that's just based on the addition of May River and River Ridge. Prior to that, you had the additions at Well Branch Early College High School, so you see a slight increase. And total square feet per worker per year, you see that we dropped. We were at a higher rate when we weren't quite performing as high. Back when we've had some higher scores, it's dropped down and it's slowly inching up, but it's still not too far off our low level of FY 2018. So Matt, do you want to stop there to talk about work orders before we move into the survey results, or would you like me to continue on?
I think if there are any questions about the work orders, then we should stop now, because it's a lot of information. So
Yep.
let's see, does everybody have their hands up? Just because I know Kathy's on now and David.
I'm getting in the queue.
Okay, yes. Okay, Ms. Boatright?
So is the maintenance company, are they experiencing staffing shortages like we are in a lot of other areas of the district, or are they fully staffed?
Good question. So actually, you may be down one person, down a painter right now.
But overall, they managed to maintain.
Yeah, maintenance has not been impacted as much as a custodial or transportation, and that is a good thing and a bad thing. The bad thing is that if you're looking at ramping up for a temporary time period, it's tougher because maintenance doesn't have the churn that, say, transportation or custodial has. It's quite easy in those departments to ramp up and ramp back down just to natural people leaving and coming and going. That happens naturally with those departments quite often. Maintenance doesn't have that high level of turnover. Total employees are about 64. And so they've stayed pretty fully staffed this whole time.
Kudos to them. And then I have one other question with regards to worker, if you don't mind. Did the shortened summer impact, was there okay, because I don't know, you didn't mention that, but when I saw those numbers, I was like, it has to be the fact that they didn't get the normal amount of time
Right.
to get all their work done.
Yeah. I mean, yes, that and the level of, you got a shortened summer with an increased level of construction projects.
Right.
So for both custodial and maintenance, that causes an issue with just getting in their way. You know, you can't even get access to buildings till almost the end of the summer. So that's a very good point of neglect that I hate that I didn't bring that up myself.
It looks William and Kathy's.
Okay, Ms. Rodine?
Yes, I'm a little confused about the graphs, the work order stats. If the total square footage has gone up and the number of workers has stayed constant, how does the total square footage per worker go down? I don't get that.
You'll see that it went down back in 2017, 2018, where we did increase workers. We just have not increased workers in the last year, is what I was saying. Not recently have we increased workers. And you can see that between 19 and or 20 and 21, it stays pretty flat.
So what about, so we had fewer workers in 2011 then, when it was way up, 2012?
Yes. So we added maintenance staff, back in 2015 is when River Ridge opened. We added maintenance at that time. In 16, May River opened, we added some more personnel. In 16, which of course that same 16 is FY 17, and that's where that big drop is there. That's about the time May River opened and we added the personnel. Yes, sir.
Okay.
2006 and landscape.
So we added a whole department we hadn't had previously in 2016 is what Mr. Miller was saying. We added a landscaping group that previously we didn't have. We were contracting most of that work. No, so, and just to clarify the difference between grounds and the maintenance landscape group, grounds does what's referred to in the industry as mow, go, and blow. They mow, they edge, they blow everything off. We use the maintenance crews for special projects, tree removals. They mow around ponds, they're responsible for fence lines. The more intricate, not repetitive work is what maintenance does. Your repetitive work is what the grounds crew does.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
And is maintenance contract out through the district, or does maintenance directly work for the district?
So maintenance is a contract. They're a contracted firm. ABM is the firm we're contracted with right now to provide maintenance services, and they are responsible for labor only. We pay for all the equipment and materials that are used.
And that's something I'm a bit concerned with when listening to the results and listening to how we're doing this presentation, and in reference to the at the beginning you said that they didn't get a pay increase, so or they didn't get any bonuses, but that the bonuses would not come from us because they're contracted out and they have a contract with us. So they have a bonus that will come from their contractor, correct?
I'm afraid, Mr. Smith, I did not mention anything about their pay.
At first when you said also you said they didn't get any bonuses or they didn't get any when you begin your
Back to, they got no COVID, yes, for
Right.
any, I was more talking about expansion of their numbers of personnel, that we did not provide any COVID funds for any kind of personnel expansion, is what I was saying.
Okay, because what I took it as is that maybe maybe we need to go when we do the budget that was something that we would need to budget for. So that's what brought that concern to me. But if they're contract out, then they're not really within our up on us directly as a district. They're not a part of they're not our employees of the district. Technically speaking, it sounds like.
No, I mean, I agree with your point, is that's kind of what this conversation is, that it maybe it is something we need to consider as far as whether they need to add personnel. Their contract, we tell them how many personnel they're allowed to have. So their contract's not set up that they judge the need. I mean, they would come to us as a district and let us know that they think they need additional personnel. And we would then have to approve that. And as you say, have that part of the budget process to make sure that's included in our budget for any kind of additional needs that maintenance has. Back when we added, anytime we've added maintenance personnel, we've had to expand their contract to include those additional people. Additional positions.
Well, that is one of my concerns. Also, when will we just along those questions? Today, which is this update or is this a renewal of the contract? Or I'm trying to figure out where we're going. What's the ending results in today?
This is the operational expectation. This is the board's work that we do, the governance form.
Right, but my question, Madam Chair, is this an update, or is he asking for? What will he be asking for? Anything in the end of this? Is my question. Because we have different updates, but there comes times where at a certain point in time where someone may make a motion to ask for something, or there may be times when they bring things before us, and they want something out of it. So I'm just trying to figure out exactly, is it an update or where are we heading? Which road are we going down exactly? So just so I can be clear to understand the process of this presentation today.
So at the conclusion of this report, I'm anticipating that we will have a motion of whether or not to recommend to the full board acceptance of this operational expectation. However, I believe to your point, Mr. Smith, it's also a question that I was going to ask Mr. Otting when he was explaining about the amount of effort maintenance has had to put in is equal to 2 full-time workers, but no additional personnel. I was going to ask him if he is making a recommendation or wanted some feedback on perhaps the need to hire additional personnel. So if you're finished your questioning, then I can go on to that, or we can see if you want some more clarification on your questioning.
Yes, ma'am. Along with that, I just wanted to know, along with that, I was just really trying to also understand, do we have a copy of that contract? Because I think at some point, I think that it would be within the board's interest to possibly look at that, because I think there's some other underlying things that I think that as a board member I would definitely be interested in to see whether how this contracts supports what the district does in terms of finance and everything else.
Right, I do believe we saw that contract probably, was it about 16 months ago?
I think you're about 2 years in.
18 months ago, 2 years, okay. That's, I believe, I remember the report on that contract, Mr. Smith, but certainly if you would like to view it, I'm sure that there's a copy that can be viewed. If you
Thank
come
you.
into the district office, I'm sure you have a copy of it. So, thank you, Mr. Smith. Okay, if you could put your hand down, please. Mr. Rodding, so what about that question about what, through your analysis, what is your recommendation? Are you going to, do you feel it is time and will be, continue to be time? Do you need some?
Well, that to me was more of a question of conversation. It's, are we going to continue needing the PPE for months or years to come? Or is this something that we can weather this storm, shut down? I mean, because it's been taking on a whole nother function of warehouse distribution is what it's been, which especially in the beginning worked very well because we bought in bulk. We were supplied with materials by the state. We made sure that we got that out to all the schools as needed. So, that warehouse in the early stages of the pandemic, we couldn't have functioned without it. I'll be quite honest, I'm so glad. I don't know if we didn't have it over there. And we've completely packed it with, or at least half of it, with PPE materials. And that requires managing, that requires when a 18-wheeler comes up, somebody's got to unload it. So that's the whole, is that going to continue? And quite frankly, I don't know that answer.
Yeah.
Things are kind of trending down where schools are still PPE. We've stepped back from supplying as much as we did in the past, but there's still a big portion that we supply on a regular basis.
Okay.
So I don't know the answer. And I'm not asking for it right now.
Yeah.
Unless everybody feels that, yeah, that's something we really need to continue. And I think it's going to be going on for, it almost needs to be going on for years. Because like I said, maintenance doesn't ramp up people and ramp down very easy. That's not.
No, I think that, to be honest, I don't know if anyone has a hand up.
Ms. Everett?
Thank you. I do think that's getting a little out of the scope of this compliance report. I think that's something that we would have to bring back as a separate agenda item.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. So let's keep that in mind, okay? And actually too, some of the additional information you're going to provide us will give us more understanding. Before we move on though, and I'm awfully glad that Mr. Earl Campbell is on the line, because I do have a question about the work orders. Mr. Earl Campbell and I, as part of the North of the Broad Committee, have visited every school north of the Broad. And in our visits, we had some conversations with principals about work that needed to be done, work that was completed or not completed. And so the whole idea of the work orders came up. And so I asked about the process of the work orders. And one of the questions I had after seeing a particular area at Ladies Island Middle School that supposedly had been completed, that was not completed, I said, so who signs off on the work orders? Once the work orders are completed, does the principal sign off and say, okay, this is done to my satisfaction? An assistant principal or somebody in the school? And the answer was, as I recall, and I believe someone said that they're signed off by the supervisor. And then I believe, Mr. Campbell, is this correct? We asked how many supervisors? Are there two? One north of the Broad, one south of the Broad?
Yes, that's what we were.
More, yes.
Mr. Campbell, go ahead, please.
Yes, that's what we were told. And my concern was that if the length of time it takes to get a work order completed, my concern, my recommendation would be if maintenance cannot get it done in time, then we need to hire somebody outside of the community to come in and do the work. Because we should not have the problem that we are having in these schools. And I will go further than that when we talk about the visits to all these schools, because there's issues and situations that some of these schools should not even be there. Trash outside the back of the school, limbs are down on the ground, and some of them have been there for months. You know, and that's ridiculous.
Right.
Thank you.
And you're right, Mr. Campbell. And to the work order in particular, though, it just kind of stymied us that there wasn't a building level person that signs off that the work order has been completed to the satisfaction of the. So that's why I was very interested in this part of this OE to say, what is the process and why is there no building personnel that says, yes, this has been done, finished, it works now, or it's fixed, whatever.
Right, so I heard several questions.
Okay.
I got, the main one is the work order process. I think, the role of the supervisor kind of was mentioned and may need to touch on that. The use of outside contractors was mentioned. Does that cover those topics? So I'm gonna look at Brandy and Ed. Brandy, do you want to take the work order process? And Ed, do you want to take how your supervisors work and what your number of supervisors are?
Let's come up to the table if you'd like to. It might be too close for you, but please go ahead.
And then what was the last one? Outside contractor. I know Ed.
Okay.
So Brandy, if you'll
Yeah,
go over
so I'll
just
take
the
the
work
work
order
order
process.
initial. So the initial process for the work orders are submitted by our facilities. Schools and or our program facilities, there's normally one primary work order requester access at each location, and then we also ask locations to identify a backup user that can submit the work orders. Once those work orders come in, they are workflowed into School Dude, which is our program that we use, our maintenance direct module of School Dude. Those work orders are received into the maintenance department. And then the maintenance department will assign them out accordingly to whatever that particular craft or specialty needs to take care of that. Our managers south of the Broad, we have an area manager south of the Broad and a area manager north of the Broad. And those two individuals will work through assigning those work orders as they come in, and then also printing those work orders out to distribute out to their technicians to go out into those facilities and take care of those work orders. Once the employees receive those work orders, they then take them to those locations, do the work that's assigned, and then they will sign off on those work orders and put the amount of time that they have put in to complete that work order. And then they will bring those work orders back to their supervisors. Their supervisors and managers will then review those work orders and then go into the School Dude system maintenance direct to add the action information as far as what was completed on that work order. And basically go into the system to update that work order, whether it's be to complete it or to change whatever status that would apply to that particular job.
Okay, so in that process, I'm hearing that again, there's nobody at the school level that signs off. The actual maintenance person that is fixing the problem signs off him or herself.
That is correct. Now, what they have been instructed to do at the locations that they are servicing is to have conversation with the either requester of that work order or with their front office admin / personnel to update them as to what they've done as far as completing the service.
There should be
So
an
it's-
email as well as now.
So there's more of a verbal conversation at the school level, and then the requester that actually input that request initially, they will get a notification when that work order status is changed. So once it's assigned, that requester gets a notification from school dude saying your work order has been assigned. And then they also will get a notification when the work order has been completed. So there are email notifications that school dude will send out to the requester, so that person that put that work order in knows that that status of the work order has changed. So those are our 2 points of contact. The technician has been asked to go to that school or go to that facility front desk or admin and say, hey, I'm here, this is what I've done. So there's 1 point of that communication that is supposed to occur. And then the second is our school dude module is actually sending a notification every time the work order status changes to the requester that put that work order in.
So, but they send it saying that it's completed, right?
They will send it if there's any status change. So if it goes from new to work in progress, they'll see every time the status changes in that work order, they'll see. So when it's completed, they'll get a notification from school dude that says it's completed and what action was taken.
So they completed again to the maintenance person's satisfaction, not to a school-based person's satisfaction, correct?
That is correct. There's no sign off at the school level.
Okay. Mr. Scrivener?
Thank you. I'm glad that the status is being communicated to, and the requester has a view into the status changes, because I think that was an issue a few years back. But I'm going to suggest that you can't close a work order without the signature of the person that issued the work order. And that's just, you know, everywhere I've ever been, that's been the process, that the person that makes the request ultimately has to sign off that the request was satisfied. So I'm going to suggest that we make that change. It might eliminate some issues. Thank you.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes, I have to agree with Mr. Scrivener. The teacher or the assistant, I mean the principal or assistant principal, whoever put in the work order, once the job is finished, they should sign off on it and make sure that the work has been done. And before it goes back to the district, you know, because I think it seems to me that what has been happening in the past is that a lot of times the work order that was put in, or maybe the maintenance person come out to the school and look at it and maybe did some work, but he may not have finished the work. And the principal sitting there wondering, when are they going to finish it? And I agree with what Mr. Scrivener said. We need to look at this a different way, because it's causing a lot of problem in our schools. And you're talking about things that can affect the students, you know. And I think we need to look at that much closer. Thank you.
Mr. Wright?
So if I can, we've got some things that we're working on. I'd like you to consider those, or we're going to talk about those in just a minute. I'm going to have Ed talk about some of the things we're doing to improve it. I would just throw out there that part of what we don't want to do is burden the school managing work orders. So just keep that in mind, because in some schools you're talking about a massive amount of time that you're going to be requesting if they sign off. What we're going to work on is work on that communication with the principals and the teachers. And one of the things Brandy's role is going to allow her to do is visit schools on a regular basis, give principals a line of communication, so when they're having problems, that she can be dedicated to that, to go out and solve those problems and find out what the issues are. I'm fearful that if the school has to sign off on work orders, that's going to put a massive burden on the school staff that they don't currently have. I'll give you an example. So when we go out, and one work order may be to replace 20 air conditioning filter units up there. So we go do that. Now you're gonna ask school staff to go up on the roof and check 20 different air conditioning units to make sure filters have been replaced. That's not feasible. But what we need to do a better job, and that is that giving the principals someone to talk to when they have issues so that we can run down those issues and resolve that I fully acknowledge we need to work on, and that's what Randy's role is going to be, is try to facilitate that.
David and Ingrid and Earl.
Okay, Ms. Boatright?
Well, the other thing I was thinking about with the work order process with schools is that maintenance is there's a lot of liability in verifying that maintenance has been performed, and I'm not sure how that would affect if a principal said, because I know that there's OSHA and you've got kids, and if a principal says, okay, this has been met to my satisfaction, and then there's an incident, I think that we have to consider the liability that the school will be taking on. But I do think what I hear from board members is that the maintenance people need to be a little more accountable to the school, as far as if something's done, if it's not done. And I will say, I just want to say as a positive note, the gentleman that works with my cluster, apparently he has all the schools. I think his name is Anthony. People love him. They just think he's stretched really thin. So that might be another part of the solution, is having more maintenance staff as opposed to taking on the liability back into schools. But I do think there needs to be some mechanism where certain things, if a principal deems it not done to their satisfaction, like trash removal or a tree branch, that they can escalate it.
No, I was gonna say, no, I agree. That's what I'm not trying to run from the issue. I agree completely. We need to give principals somebody that they can bring those issues to, so they can work with.
Mr. Scrivener?
Thank you. As far as the sign off goes, you're already talking to them. You're already explaining to them what was done. So you just get a signature. And the signature indicates that they've had it explained to them and they're satisfied. I don't think, I understand what you're saying, Robert, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. It just closes the loop, and you don't have these incomplete things that seem to be bugging us. So I would stand pretty firm on having the person sign off, even if they're just signing off that has been explained to them that 14 air filters were put in. Okay, it was explained to them and they accept the explanation and they sign off. I think we're making it into a bigger deal than it may be. Thank you.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes, I'm not suggesting that anyone from the staff go up on the roof and look at the air conditioner or the leak. But if someone comes out there and say they repaired it and they still have the problem, then that person should complain, and that's what I'm getting at. Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
I definitely agree with Mr. Scrivener. If they're already out there and they're already talking, I don't see the problem with them talking about it and being explained and them signing it off. And in fact, I think that will be less work because of the fact that you're already actively engaged, talking to someone, seeing what the problem is. And also, then that would also lessen the principal's work and everyone else, because I've had several phone calls about work orders saying that the air conditioners and different things were not fixed. We're not fixing the classroom, or things weren't done. And so I think what that does is I think that is just quick, and it's a simple step. As if I'm here talking to you, here I'm completed, this is what I did. I signed off when I really didn't have to track a principal down, and then I have to look for no one, whoever work orders there, whoever they're doing it for, they're right there and they've done it. And also that creates a level of accountability, and that's clear. So I definitely agree with Mr. Scrivener on that, because I think that's very doable, and it's not heartaches, and it doesn't create it doesn't create a whole bunch of work at all. It's simply, yes, I'm happy with it, I'm a little displeased with it, and it's done. Thank you.
I think we need to have this conversation another time, because I think it's a big deal. I do think I am hyper aware of liability, because when you work in healthcare, you are hyper aware of liability. And I just have to say, we've hired an outside contractor. I do think that we need to have a discussion. I'm not sure I'm right about this, but I can tell you from a parental standpoint, if my child was injured by a falling ceiling tile that this principal had signed off as repair, I would absolutely sue the school. I just think that, we need to be careful, because right now, all the liability for these repairs are with our maintenance contractor. If we start signing off on repairs being completed, I'm not sure I'm right, but I do think we need to at least look at the liability the school will be taking on. So my recommendation would be that we bring this up at a future meeting, because I think it's a big discussion.
Well, I just, I would think if you go down that road, principals need to be involved in that discussion. I'd want to have, I'd give principals the ability to voice what their thoughts are on having them sign off on maintenance work.
Mr. Smith, is your hand up again?
Yes, ma'am. I don't think it's in terms of signing off saying the job is completed. I think it's more or less of also of signing. It doesn't have to be a completion. The supervisor still can complete, but they're signing off saying that yes, they were here. Either they're happy with it, they're not happy with it, or the problem is still occurring, or yes, you're not. They're not saying that they went there and checked out the roof as Mr. Campbell stated a minute ago. I think it is more along the line is that they do have a voice in that either they see the work as kind of whatever if it's for instance the air is broken. Okay, yes, the guy was here and he fixed the air, or he attempted. That's also a level of accountability, and that's a tracking to see the success rate and to see also what's going on versus a survey where somebody may fill it out and which they may not. Now you have a day-to-day tracking and understanding exactly what is taking place. So I disagree, as in you're saying that it's done completely. They're not professional. They're not saying that it's done. They're saying, well, yes, someone was here, they worked on it. As of right now, it appears to. I'm satisfied with it. It doesn't even have to word. The word does not have to be complete. It's satisfied with it, less satisfied with it, still concerned about it. If you're still concerned about it, then the supervisor would need to. He would know that he or she would need to go back out there. I think it's all about the wording that we use. So I can't disagree with that, because the teachers they do matter, and they are the ones, and the employees are the ones who are calling these things in and know exactly what they're reporting. Not always the administrator. Thank you.
Okay, so this topic has generated a lot of ideas, and the reason Mr. Earl Campbell in our visits wanted to bring this up is because we do see there's a problem. There's a problem in the closing of the loop. I understand, Mr. Otting, that you're trying to rectify that with your new position. I think you bring up a good point. It should involve some of what the schools look for, but what Mr. Earl Campbell and I were hearing is that the work orders are being signed off and the work wasn't done completely, and then, we'll put another work order in. So there just needs to be a closing of the loop. So I would like to recommend that we add this to a future maybe board meeting, larger conversation, get Ms. Cartledge involved with Ms. Boatwright's concerns, right? Mr. Hines looking at it holistically, conversations that can be had about what this will look like. And the bottom line is that Mr. Campbell and I saw that the answer was put another work order in. Put another work order in instead of it just being taken care of at the time. Okay. Thank you very, very much. The last question I had was, we talked in 2016, we had a landscaping group for tree removal, stenciling, stuff like that. Other areas, was just
Ms. Fidrich, I can't. Ms. Fidrich, I can't understand anything you're saying. You're breaking up, and I agree with everything you said, even though I didn't understand it. I think there's a technical problem. Maybe Will and Earl, I don't know. Is it just me?
No,
it's me as well. I was just about to say the same thing, but I was thinking maybe it was my device or something. But no, yeah, I agree.
So thank you, David. Obviously, we're frozen. Okay, so Kathy, David, Mr. Campbell, can you guys hear us?
yes.
Clear,
Okay.
nice.
So the room does not have the microphone on. It's just my individual computer. The microphone is on. So David, I'm going to reiterate what I was saying. Okay, in the visiting of the schools, Mr. Earl Campbell and I saw a lot of concerns that had to do with landscaping and tree removal, bush hogging, and we were told that that is a separate thing. So now I understand, I think that in 2016, that was the landscaping group that was added. So there's an area at James Davis that supposedly for sight of traffic, the area was supposed to have been bush hogged. There are limbs down all around Whale Branch Middle. And so we were told that that was the type of thing that needed to be done with this landscaping group. Put a work order in. So I guess it just, that just is another example of some of the type of work orders that don't seem either to be completed or nobody has the right understanding of whose responsibility it is. Okay, hold on one second. Can you guys hear? Mr. Miller is going to be speaking about the bush hogging.
Can't hear a thing.
bold to do that with, then we don't wanna go do something else.
We can't hear him. If he's talking, we definitely can. We can hear words moment, but we can't hear him.
Okay.
That being said, we have equipment values quite lengthy
Oh,
with our large bush hogs. Getting some of the, let's spend down to 200. So, and nobody rents those just because they get a lot of use. So we're getting that one back online and then we'll be able to pop back up that scope of work. As far as limits being picked up, that should be ongoing. The mow and blow crews, if they're in these wooded and lawn areas, they're supposed to pick those up, pile them up, and then we'll put them in the dumpster. That's how that process works.
okay, so I believe some of that process has fallen apart because in speaking with the principals, they will say, well, we asked the landscapers to do it, and they say that's not part of what we're contracted to do. Somebody else is supposed to do that. So there seems to be a great deal of lack of communication or understanding about whose responsibility, and then it's not getting done. So the 15 or 17 schools that Mr. Campbell and I visited, this was a common refrain in those schools that are greatly wooded. You know, Ladies Island Middle, Whale Branch, things like that. So Mr. Earl Campbell, was there anything else you wanted to add to that?
No, I would just like to say that as far as
I just want to make sure anybody that's on Zoom, can you hear all this? Okay, Candace, thank you. I see you nodding. Okay.
My concern.
All right,
is
thank you
this.
very much for that explanation.
Yes.
I can just add to that.
Sure.
So on the grounds contractor, we've had some changeover with our grounds contractor and their supervisors that Randy has already been out there working on what their scope is because they needed to be reminded of what their responsibilities are. So I will just say that's an ongoing problem. And any of the hair the head doesn't have on his head is probably that all that's missing, or a good portion of it is due to that bush hog that we, it was over $2,500, it was about $8,000. And so it had to be bid out. The bidder that was the low bid said they tried to bid it high enough and they didn't want the work. It's been sitting there. They said they were going to work on their farmers equipment before they work on ours. It was the low bidder. We finally removed it from it. So it's been, and of course the schools are yelling at us to get bush hogging work done. So that's been a very big frustration for everybody, I would say. And I think we're, and the problem is we haven't been able to rent equipment, but you have rented a zero turn now to do some of the work. So I'm not, it's just that is a known issue that is a very big frustration for us. And we just needed to fix the equipment.
And so at what point though, do we just outsource that if we're just waiting on equipment?
Well, that's what
Oliver's Whale Branch Middle or the high school?
So, yeah, I mean, but it's a very expensive proposition to do that. So, I mean, yes, we're having to do that now because we don't have the equipment repaired that allows us.
Okay. Well, I think what you can hear from this conversation is there's concern about the maintenance, our grounds and the maintenance. So, okay. Mr. Smith, you have a question?
I was going to say, you might want to pass the computer around when the other people.
Okay, Mr. Smith, I'm sorry to interrupt you, sir, but I need to turn my speaker up so we can hear you because it's coming through my computer. Okay, go ahead.
Now I was going to say, when you talk, you might want to pass when other people in the room talk, you might want to pass your computer around so that we can hear them because we can barely hear them because they're talking a little low, so we can barely hear them when they're talking. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mr. Auding was sitting right next to me and I did have my computer right near him, but I appreciate that. We will, we're trying, Molly's trying desperately to get us back up into the room speaker. All right, so I'm going to ask Mr. Auding to continue and I will give him my computer to speak right into the microphone.
Now, are you able to do the presentation, Robin? If you could move it on to the maintenance survey. So we're going to go on to the maintenance survey portion. Let me get my papers in there. So I kind of forecasted already what the results were going to be. And what you see in front of you are the quality of service results. And several items below. How well do you believe your school is being maintained? Rate your technician's knowledge of your problem. Rate staff on being proactive to solve problems. Do you feel that maintenance staff is knowledgeable on how to maintain your building? Is the maintenance staff working efficiently in your building? And are the work orders completed to expectation? And one of the things, maintenance typically has very high scores on these, being 3 or higher. And you'll see on this that all of these except one are pretty much lower than 3. They're in between 2.5 and 3, which is at the lowest level they've been previously. So all the things that you're talking about are the problems that you're seeing out there are being reflected in this survey. First off, that is what we're seeing. We're at, say, the worst point that maintenance has been in as far as survey results. And the only one above 3 was, do you feel maintenance staff is knowledgeable on how to maintain your building? So, and you see what how they've rated in the past. The next page, if Robin, you go to the next page. This is the first time we've done a teacher survey. We sent this out to the teacher forum and asked for them to respond. The interesting thing you're going to see here is that their responses are extremely similar to the administration's. They're not the same, they're slightly different, but they mirror each other. And in this category, the teachers were actually a little softer or nicer than the administration in how well maintenance did, where you see that 3 of those items were above a 3.0. And the rest of them were pretty close to 3.0, except how well do you believe your school is being maintained, which is closer to the 2.5 range. So since this is the first time we've done this, that was good to see, is that in all categories, you can see in all these surveys that the teachers were pretty much in line with, and I think, are we up now? Or, okay, the teacher survey was in line with the administration survey. And let me just note, I call it the administration survey. These are sent to all principals, but principals typically either they may do it themselves, they may assign it to an AP, they've assigned it to office managers, bookkeepers, and I've even heard them assigning it to their SIC chairs. So we don't know who filled out the administration survey. The teacher survey, it's whoever the principal assigned it to. But the teacher survey, we know for certain those were all teachers that had the response there. So I may pause here for a second because Molly may bring us up, and I may need Trish you to turn off your mics and stuff.
Okay.
Test, 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 test.
Sounds good.
Excellent. Okay, it looks like. Okay, mine is off.
Should I log back in or should I just say out?
Whatever you want.
Okay, everybody, I think we are back on. Can, please let us know if you cannot hear us. Mr. Otting has just given us the administration survey and the teacher survey and is asking for any questions. Mr. Smith?
Two more categories.
Okay, Mr. Smith, Mr. Otting has two more categories and then we'll go for questions, okay? Thank you.
So the last category is customer service responses. You'll see that it rates the customer service of the director, assistant director, then the managers, the customer service of the technicians, and then the last two items are responsiveness to work orders and then also emergency work orders. And what you see there is, and I've lost my, turn around. There it is. Okay. On the quality of service, again, you see from the administration survey that you've dropped in 3 of the 5 categories, or actually 4 of the 6 categories. You drop below the 3.0, but above 2.5. And then you've got 2 of the categories where you're either at 3 or slightly above. And so if you move on to the teacher survey, you see it's similar. They've got 3 of the responses above 3.5, actually, and the other 2 are near 3. So again, on customer service and responsiveness, the teachers did rate maintenance performance. Actually, that's a good rating, or what we typically like to see. And so the teachers did rate it considerably higher than administration on that category, in those categories. So with that, I conclude, although before I take questions, Ed, do you want to talk about any of the improvements that y'all are moving forward with or planning to? You probably need to come up the table. Why don't you take my chair?
Certainly will.
Robert, I don't need a chair for my back.
It is yours.
We were able to see the surveys during our last client business review that we had with the district, and it was not a good thing to see. Felt like there was work that needed to be done. So myself and our corporate, we got together and we came up with some ideas on how to improve communication, because obviously something needs to be done. So one thing we've been doing, we started about 4 months ago, we started doing what we called site surveys, where managers and supervisors go out and they just eyes and ears look at the facilities and they fill out this survey. It just shows that they're out there and they're giving some feedback and input. I can elaborate on more on that, but it's basically 10 points. They pick one, they go around the school and they rate it. And the object is not to come back with 100%. The object is to find defects and then put in work orders to fix those defects. And you keep doing that, and over time, you start eliminating things. And also you take your people with you to show you what you're seeing. And that way everybody gets that same mindset to look for things wrong. The second thing we're going to be implementing, and I just got with technology today to get a mailbox, we're going to be handing out cards to some of the work orders. Say you do a work order in a room where there's a specific person, and then you will leave a work order response card asking that person, are they happy with what was done? This is, it was completed, not completed, and has the technician's name on it, gives them a little buy-in on that. And also it's going to have an email. If you have any questions or concerns, please email us, let us know what your concerns are. Because the problem we're seeing is, again, the requester gets a response back saying the work order is completed. The teacher or the person that puts it into the requester, they never get any notification. They don't understand the process. So we feel like that may help close the loop. And bring some of that around. Also, all of my managers have reached out to all the points of contact in the schools to try to set up a scheduled meeting, whether it's weekly. Most of them are every other week, some are monthly, to where they can go over what we call an open work order report. And this way you're sitting down one-on-one with an AP or whoever is the maintenance focused person in that school and go over what's been completed, what's open, and then what the time frame is for completion, and also prioritization. Because that's always a big part. You may have putting up tax strips, which everything's important, but if you have things that are gonna fall and hurt kids, or things not working, that's always a priority to fix those. Safety first, what we have to focus on. And that's how my managers prioritize work orders. If they see something that says safety, or it could be a concern, we try to put that to the top of the list. When you have a lot of safety things, other things tend to fall to the bottom of the list. So I think between those few things, I think it'll help. We do 23,000 work orders a year, and getting a signature on all of them would be a large task. Not saying it's impossible, I'm just saying it would be a large task. It would take man hours. Some of them I feel like it's probably needed. Another thing we're doing is when I create a user or requester in school duty, we can create at a site administrator, and that person has the capability of looking at all the work orders submitted for that school. So in that, they can see what the status of every work order that has been submitted or has been completed, however they want to look at it. And school duty is very user friendly as far as if you have a question, all you got to do is pick up the phone and ask them. They'll tell you how to run a report or how to manage the work orders. I do it from time to time when I get stuck on something, and I've been doing it for 10 years. And I just call them up when they say, oh, well, you can do this, or they say, you can't do that. So they're very user friendly, and I'm never afraid to use them. They answer the phone real quickly, and they always usually come up with an answer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. I appreciate that. We appreciate the responsiveness to the concerns. Again, because we do have some concerns. Robert?
Madam Chair, the video audio of the room is gone, so we can't really see who's talking.
Turned on.
We all turned off our video so that we were hoping it was going to help with the internet connection stability. Okay, so that was Mr. Ed Miller. He's the director of maintenance. He was the one that was just speaking. Okay, so thank you for that, Mr. Smith. We'll make sure we identify ourselves before speaking. Okay. Mr. Audit?
All right, well, that concludes what we had on maintenance.
Okay.
If you're ready, I'll move on to custodial.
I got it.
Yes, Ms. Boatright?
Have you talked to other district maintenance programs? Are they experiencing some of the same issues that we're experiencing because of COVID and staffing? Have you talked to anybody else?
To be honest, no, I have not reached out. I know we've reached out to the transportation side because that's been a big issue as far as staffing, but no, I have not reached out and had conversations about it.
Okay, custodial.
There are no other questions. I'll move on to custodial. So we start off with just some nice pictures of clean floors from the summer clean. Note that this summer clean was a little different than others. We did not fully strip and wax all floors. We buffed and coated floors. That means just kind of we buffed them and then put extra coats of wax on top of that. That was just due to the shortened summer and what we were doing in the time frame. increased sanitation, you know, if you haven't seen a picture of what the halo mist looks like, that's what that machine is there. We're continuing to pay special attention to all touch points. We still have our additional day porters in our smaller elementary schools, so we can manage those touch points in extra areas. And we'll move on to the custodial surveys. These are set up in the same format. We have the administration surveys and then the teacher surveys. You'll note that there, in most of these categories, there's a slight fall from previous, but I will say, even where we are now, if you look historically to our previous contractor, they're outperforming any of the highest performances that the previous contractor had. So they are declining, and something that we need to watch, but they're still fairly high. Where I said maintenance, you know, 3.0, we don't want to see below. Custodial usually is good to get a 3.0. You're very, and then 2.5 is where if it starts to drop under that, you start to have concerns. So this first, as you see, set up very similar. It's the courtesy of the district manager, and the area level managers, and the in-school staff, responsive staff requests, the overall quality of the cleanliness of your school, and then the COVID disinfecting practices. And you'll notice actually the first three were above 3.5, fourth above 3, and the lowest of all is the COVID disinfecting practices, where it seems like we've had one of the larger jumps. And then if you flip to the teacher surveys, you can see they're still just in line, 3.5 and above for the first 4. And then the last 2 is where they fall off, but maybe like the COVID for teachers is not quite as far down as it was for administration, but it's still a lower score. So, moving on to entranceways and hallways. You're going to see a lot of these are going to be repetitive formats for different areas of the building. It's going to look at mats, glass windows and water fountains, dusting, floor care, walls, and then restrooms. And almost all of the scores for entrances and hallways were near 3.0, so we consider that very good on the custodial side. Teacher surveys, very similar, all right around 3.0. Move on to administration and other office areas. You see there again hovering near 3.0, and actually dusting and furniture went higher. It's one of the few that actually improved over last time. Most of the rest of them are on a decline, but still very good being near 3.0. The teacher survey, very similar results, right at a 3.0. Move on to classrooms, administration surveys. We've seen a little bit of a drop, getting closer to a 2.5, above a 2.5, but going in that direction. And you go to the teachers. The teachers rated the classrooms less than administration. This is one of the first ones where teachers saw that the classrooms were not as clean as administration, particularly in the dusting and furniture, where you see it drop below 2.5. The restrooms getting close to 3.0 for classrooms, very good. Move on to media centers, everything close to a 3.0. With the teacher survey for media centers, everything close to a 3.0. Move on to multipurpose rooms, all items right at 3.0. Teacher surveys had a little bit of a fall off on the bleachers, but besides that, everything right near a 3.0. Cafeteria, all responses near a 3.0. Teacher, same, all responses near a 3.0. So that concludes the custodial survey and report, and I'll take any questions you need.
I don't see any hands, but Mr. Otting, I have one question. If I remember correctly, when we looked at this, the interpretation, we discussed about the number, the percent of responses, right? And we discussed how important it is to get responses. what is the percentage response that you receive from the principals
So that
or
was,
their designees?
we have that, there had been conversations previously about getting as high as 90% as a
Right.
goal. And where we are here is 67%. And on the teachers, 63, I'm sorry, 63%. So it is under a 90% goal. I'm going to work on that. We did not work on that. I mean, quite frankly, we're gonna have to send write-up letters or something like that nature to principals to tell them we're taking this very seriously and they have to respond. So that's, we need to give them some notification that us, and it's very important to get these responses, and we did not do that this time. So that is something that we will look at doing next, making sure we give principals warning letters and then let them know that there'll be actions taken if they do not respond.
So, this, you said this survey was conducted September timeframe?
Yes. Right, and that's
Okay.
near the start of school,
Right.
right after the start
Right.
of school is the bad time.
And I do know that we have something like 9 new principal positions or changing of principal positions. So I do appreciate that you are aware that that is less than what the goal was. But I do think we have some mitigating circumstances with the principal turnover. And I'm glad to see 63, because if I'm not mistaken, I think that the response rate last year when we first looked at this was down below 40.
We've been in the 20, I don't know if we've ever gotten that, low, you know, Brandon.
40%?
60, 50 to 60 is about our number.
Okay, so then there, even since there was no increase, okay.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not an increase, but we're gonna have to take a little more active role to get that number up.
I think since our maintenance contracts and our custodial contracts are so large, they affect every aspect, every person that works in this district, that the completion of these surveys really is important because decisions will be made based on some of these surveys. So, okay, Mr. Smith?
I have gotten several phone calls from different teachers and saying that in concern with custodial services. So it does speak to some degree of what was said today, but I think this is, as you said, Ms. Bridges, this is definitely a important role component in serving this district, in which terms of faculty and staff and student safety, with health issues and anything else that may occur. So I think it's very important that we get as much as feedback as possible, so that everyone can be on the same page, and we can make sure that we are getting the services that we are paying for. I've had some. I'm saying, basically, the staff members that have called me have been very complaining, saying that they have left certain things on their trash can to see if their trash has been taken out, or they'll put a blue pencil in their trash to see if it's taken out, and it's been there for several days. So that is something, especially due to COVID, that we would want to make sure that it's being taken, that is being handled. And I always tell them to make sure they let the administration know and go from there. And I try to redirect them, but this is definitely this is definitely serious.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Mel Campbell?
Well, I'm looking at this, and Robert, I understand the situation, but I would think that when we look at 63% of the people responding, I don't know if you can take this information as gospel, if you know what I mean. I mean, there's just not enough people weighing in for us to know what's really accurate in terms of the real functionability of the custodial staff. because less than 2/3 of the people are responding. So I don't know what the other 1/3 is thinking and where these numbers will go up or down, but that's not a significant amount of people responding to a survey for you to really, present it as if, and I understand the situation. But with this pandemic, it probably would be more reason to make sure that the buildings are clean. But I can accept that number.
Ms. Boatright?
I had the complete opposite response because working in data, and I just pulled this up. According to SMART survey, a good employee response rate runs between 30 and 40%. To get above 50% on a survey response is exceptionally good. And it's probabilistic thinking, it's not gospel in any way. It's a probabilistic view of what's going on. But I don't think we will ever, I mean, to me, when I saw 63%, I was like, sheesh, we're doing something right. Because most surveys, you look at political surveys, you're looking at less than 10% participation. So for an employee survey to come back above 50%, in my opinion, is actually fairly strong information.
That's not the same kind of survey though. Yeah. Employee survey for what kind of job and stuff like that, that's fine. We're talking about a survey in terms of the work quality that's being presented to you. And these people who are, they're like semi-management in terms of what we're looking for. And that survey rate ought to be a lot higher than a presidential survey or any other kind of survey. But when you're talking about the quality of work and what's being done in terms of your expectations and what's being done, that rate's a lot higher than 60%. I mean, I can't imagine that 2/3 of the people will respond to whether the building is clean or not clean in terms of teachers or administrators.
Ms. Robine?
Yeah, just my 2 cents here. If people are really upset with the quality of work that they're getting, they're going to respond to that survey. If they're feeling like it's adequate, they're less likely to respond. Just from my experiences and all the things that are thrown to you when you're a building administrator.
Okay, thank you, everybody, and thank you, Mr. Otting. Again, just to remind people that a previous conversation that we had was the importance of completing these surveys. The principals or their designees need to provide this kind of information. So I know Mr. Otting is going to continue to work hard on increasing that response rate. Okay, anything else?
Mr. Smith.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Smith?
Actually, I do agree with Mr. Campbell, but also in agreeing with him, the question also piques my mind too, is how do we know that the people who have problems are actually getting these surveys? I mean, so there are many questions out there in reference to these surveys and whether people have gotten these surveys or not. So I hear what someone said in the room, but how do we know that they're actually getting the surveys, and also how do we know that they feel if they do the surveys that something will actually come about from actually filling out the surveys? Because I've heard some teachers say that, well, they send the surveys and we fill them out, but nothing never happens. So I mean, those are a whole bunch of, if you want to play devil's advocate, other things that are out there that we're probably have not discussed today as well, in terms of surveys. And I mean, with the level of importance of COVID and cleaning of the building right now, I was hoping to at least have 85% of surveys filled out. So I definitely agree with Mr. Campbell, but I'm, once again, definitely still concerned. Thank you.
Ms. Boatright?
The only thing I'll say is I think there's a difference between an optional survey and a mandatory survey. And an optional survey response goes to sort of, who, like you said, like Ms. Robine said, who wants to. If we want higher than 63%, I think we have to make it mandatory. And someone has to chase them down and make sure they've submitted it, and it has to be, we have to switch gears, because I think for an optional survey, 63% is excellent. For a mandatory survey, I think that's the only way to get it, if you made it, and that would be a different policy, I assume.
Well, we might use it.
Okay. Mr. Scrivener?
Thank you. You know, we can keep talking about these surveys, but you know, there's a science to surveys. And so Ms. Boatwright is correct. 53% is a pretty amazing response rate. And there are assumptions you can make about the non-responders, which Ms. Robine touched on. But, you know, we can talk to somebody who actually is in that field, and they can tell us whether, you know, our perceptions of what's adequate or right or wrong. But in the meantime, we can just try to increase it. And, you know, if it keeps increasing, then we're happy. But, you know, a 90% rate would be unheard of. And then when you make something mandatory, that has an impact on your responses also. So, you know, we need to get somebody in here who knows about surveys. Like I say, it's a science. It's not off the cuff stuff. And they can explain to us whether we're right or wrong about our expectations.
Mr. Smith?
Oh, I forgot to put my hand out. I think that would, but I think that would be great for us to do that, so that we can get someone in here who would be able to tell us about surveys. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So in closing, Mr. Otting, thank you very much for this report. Ms. Majors, I'm excited to know about the new role. I think that that's a step forward. Please convey to Mr. Miller also how those 3 steps that he cited as far as trying to increase the communication will be much appreciated. And we hope to see, you know, that those will effectuate some change. So at this time, is there a motion regarding the recommendation to bring this to the full board?
Yes, I move that the Operations Committee recommend to the full board OE 8.6.
Acceptance of it?
That's what I'm pausing on the word. Acceptance of OE 8.6 on the consent agenda.
I
would like to.
Motion, the Operations Committee recommend to the full board the acceptance
of OE 8.6 monitoring report. Periodic monitoring report. So bad thinking of words on my feet.
Okay.
I think you do. If I write this.
Okay, do we have a second?
On the
for that?
consent agenda, I want to add that.
Okay, hearing no other second,
Second.
I will second it. Okay, just, oh, you did, Mr. Smith, thank you. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Rodden. All right, the next thing on our agenda is OE 15, safety and security.
Ms. Vickers,
Yes.
I would respectfully request board members if you would kindly allow us to address ARSS 47 individual healthcare plans, individual treatment plans. As Ms. Unruh has a commitment, she has to do it at 3:30. I want to make sure there's enough time. If y'all would agree to amend.
I'm fine with that. Can we, I believe we probably need a motion to amend the agenda.
I move that we amend the agenda, the order of the agenda.
Okay.
Thank you.
Second
I
that.
second that. So thank you, Mr. Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you.
So ARSS 47, individual healthcare plans, individual treatment plans.
Yes, thank you. And if I move, please Dr. White now, so she is able to come down here. Board members, I wanted to thank Ms. Unruh and Ms. Stoddard for being with us today. We've been working on the revisions to this administrative regulation. As a result of changes in the Medicaid law, they're now referred to as individual treatment plans as well. We have added some definitions, as you'll see in Roman numeral 3, A, B, and C. We have cited the self-administration medication, what the procedure is. There's a statute 5963A that we provided for you all for your reference. Ms. Unruh, Ms. Stoddard have been very helpful, and designating the importance of medication has to be an appropriate container labeled by the pharmacist. The documents have to be kept on file in the office school's administrator. And authorization can be required by the parent or the guardian to share information of legitimate need for knowledge of it. In addition, we added section 7, 504 medical accommodation plan. We've worked with Dr. White on this. And as you'll see, that's a Roman numeral number 7. If the section 4 accommodations plan must contain the components of the IHP in it. And the school nurse must be involved in the development approval of this 504 plan. We have added some references, the South Carolina Code of Regulations, the South Carolina Department of Education frequently asked questions about individual health care plans. And then the Beaufort County Schools Coherence Governance Manual contains our new policies, as Mr. Scrivener made a motion, how important it is for every AR to be tied to a board policy. And so I've been working on that. And Ms. Unruh and Ms. Stoddard have also provided a copy of the permission for school administration for prescription medication. And if you have any questions about these protocols, they are listed here, and they are more than happy to address any questions that you might have.
Ms. Albright?
Okay, so the IH, are we calling it the IET now? ITP?
ITP. It's either IHP or ITP.
Do you have to, so the ITP is part of the 504 or the IEP, correct?
No.
Or are they separate?
Yeah, they're separate. It's an amendment, like an attachment.
So you can have an ITP without having a 504?
Yes,
or an IEP.
correct, absolutely.
Are there any, but there is a process for an so can you, I guess, explain the difference, because I'll tell you what my question is. My question is for self-administration medication. Can anyone get that? Or is it only for people who have special needs as defined?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody can get that. I'm gonna take this off first, so I'm not muffled, sorry. Anyone can have self-monitoring, self-medicating paperwork, all right? This first page here has to be filled out and the doctor looks over it. Then the following pages, there's a page that the physician has to fill out, the student has to fill out, and the parent has to fill out. These medications for self-monitoring, self-medicating individuals are normally for asthma inhalers, they're for EpiPens, and they're usually for diabetics.
Right.
To be able to carry their medications. Not saying that there might not be another medication, but we do not allow any students to self-monitor or self-medicate their ADHD meds. That's in the nurse's office. Or if they're once a day, they should be taken at home.
Right.
On a daily basis, okay?
Those are my big concern was, it sounds like it's unusual, because what I read, I can't remember where I read it. If you take something 3 times a day, you shouldn't need to take it at school, morning, afternoon, evening, right, for the average medic pill. So there are probably very few scenarios where someone would request self-administration of medication. Is that common, or is that?
For diabetics,
No, I'm
it's
just
fairly.
pills, like.
Oh, no, we don't really, I don't have any, honestly, nobody this year. And I have not, in my 8 years of being here, have seen that students carry their own pills. I mean, and they can't carry any over-the-counter medications at all. That's prohibited because we carry that in our office. So say your daughter wanted to take Midol, okay? We don't have Midol. We have ibuprofen or Tylenol that you would have to sign the health card for. All right, now, if you decided, I really want my daughter to have this Midol, then you're gonna have to go to the physician and get this filled out. He or she will have to sign it. And then the Midol have to get a prescription label from the pharmacy.
And then it's kept in the nurse's office.
And it is kept in the nurse's office.
Because that was my biggest concern, is with the use of prescription medication in the middle school, high school level particularly, that kids would be allowed to self-medicate any amphetamines, any antidepressants, any anti-anxiety. So that's, because it's not anywhere in our policy or on our documents that
We have never, because first of all, that's too dangerous if we don't know if they're taking something, but they're self-monitoring, self-medicating. So from a nursing standpoint, we have to have all this paperwork before they can self-monitor or self-medicate, okay? We also have to have this paperwork before we can, just this piece of paperwork, right? The top one, before we can administer medication on a daily basis or,
Right.
you know, so we do not even, so if you brought in and you didn't have this paperwork and you wanted to hand me the EpiPen or the ADHD pill bottle, we're gonna say, no, 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 no. We have to have this done first, then you can bring the medication back. Also, parents are not allowed to give the medication bottles, which they do sometimes, but they're not supposed to do to their students to put in their backpack to take on the bus or a car rider. Now, if they don't have time to run in, we'll run out to their car and meet them as long as we have this signed and grab their medication.
But just to be clear, no time are kids allowed to carry their own ADHD, antidepressant, pain medicine. That's strictly
No,
forbidden, right?
and if they are on pain medicine, they can't be at school because that's inhibiting. Or what if they fall? You know what I'm saying? It's a safety issue.
I mean,
So-
listen, I'm worried about someone.
So, yeah, but for us, it's for us, it's a safety issue and we don't want them to be at school on a narcotic because they just had surgery. That's why they have that intermittent homebound, so they'll be able to heal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, I just from the board's awareness, a third of Ivy League students abuse amphetamines like Adderall for study aids. In addition to which Xanax is the #1 teenage abuse drug. It's not heroin, it's not pot, it's Xanax. So that was my biggest concern with this, was that it was gonna lead to people carrying pill bottles around.
No,
You know,
we don't. And one of the things, because we got this question a couple of years ago, somebody wanted us to administer birth control pills. And if you read this, it says we have the right to refuse to do anything. We are not going to administer birth control pills
did you
at
not take
school.
that out? See, I thought you guys took that out of this most recent.
No, ma'am.
Is there something in there?
They can reject the
Okay.
request for certain
Okay,
medications
yeah.
to be given at school. And birth control pills are
We
one of
did have
them.
that issue.
I mean,
come up.
well, yeah,
Yes,
we did, and we're not going to give those. I mean, that's a once a day medication.
Okay.
So, yeah, definitely. And of course, if you read this, if one of those students that are self-monitoring, self-medicating, abusing, okay, then have the right to take that away. And I'm gonna knock on wood, we've never had to do that, but if we did, we definitely would. If somebody whipped out an EpiPen and said, oh, here, I'll, you know, or somebody says, you can use my inhaler because you're short of breath, they lose that ability to carry that medication.
I don't see any other questions. I greatly appreciate you all being here because when this first came in front of us, there were some questions regarding this. So I think it has been cleared up. The questions mostly are about the self-administering and being able to carry the medication. So I don't see any other questions.
Right, and I want to thank you all for your excellent work on this, and
You're
for
welcome.
taking care of our students and for your dedication, your diligence.
There is
Thank
one.
you.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Smith, you have a question?
I actually not to have a comment. I just want to say, I just wanted to thank her and her staff for they just said for her, not only with her diligent work, but her dedication as nurses and coming in, making sure day in and day out, going through the COVID experience that you and your staff has been there for several of the district throughout the building, and we definitely appreciate it. We know it's even been times where there's been a lot on you and your personal families and the hours that you put in. So I definitely wholeheartedly appreciate everything that y'all are doing. And the words just can't express how much I really appreciate that. And people in the community, believe it or not, they appreciate it as well. I've gotten several comments and words of appreciative as well about that. So I just want to extend that. You know, my mom said you got to give good news sometime too as well. The truth is the truth. I just want to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take this, sir.
Yes. And Mr. Smith, in this regard, speaks for us all. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Our pleasure. Are you okay if we, sorry.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank
When
you.
you want me to read?
It's
it?
always nice to see you.
Making sure
my areas.
I'll talk to you later.
Thank you. All right, the next area is OE 15, safety and security.
Thanks. Thank you, Dr. White. Appreciate it. She came, she's busy today. Okay, this OE number 15, safety and security. This is the initial for your all review. Because the safety and security is presented, the monitoring programs later this year. And Mr. Grissom and I have been working on this together, and Mr. Grissom had to unexpectedly be called to a hearing today, so he's not present with us.
Okay.
But I will go ahead. First of all, I did want to point out that under the Freedom of Information Act, that there is certain information relating to security plans and devices that is closed to the public, is not considered open to the public under FOIA. But this report contains information that is public information and is open to all. So and following the format that has been developed for operational expectations, 15.1, ensure each school has a dedicated, trained, and certified security personnel and a district-wide safety and security department. I don't want to read all this to you, but I want to tell you, I have great news for you all, because with respect to the armed security guards in our schools, the protest period ran, the contract has been signed, and we've been having weekly meetings, and they've ordered their uniforms and all. They're coming in week of November 1st. They're going to be having the SUD training and all those, and they've already come down to look at the schools and all. But this is just going to protect the safety of our children in elementary schools. I'm very thankful for that. We already had some security SROs in some of our schools, but we did have them at all. So I'm very thankful on behalf of Dr. Rodriguez that we're able to fund that, because safety is our number one priority. And Mr. Grissom, he is trained, FBI graduate and certified police officer, and he does meet with with the school resource officer as well. He's at the schools all the time whenever we get an emergency as part of his job. And monitoring indicators for compliance when we provide documentation of the meetings, trainings he's attended, the efforts he's coordinated with. And then when the armed security guards and school resources officers have been trained, and the SROs are already trained, we just have to get the armed security guards trained next. Now, the next part about the district completing surveys about enhancing the school climate and to implement programs for violence prevention, bullying prevention training. I think you're all aware that this month of October is bullying prevention month, and Ms. Swinton and her team, they've had a number of programs and professional development for our students and for our staff. We do have that See Something, Say Something app. It's on all the student devices, because we want to report immediately if there have been any threats of intimidation, harassment, and bullying, and stop that immediately. Also, Ms. Swinton and her team, as well as other district staff, they work with community organizations such as Hopeful Horizons. We mentioned them here: Men of Strength Club, Strength and Empowerment, Girls Circle, and Council for Boys and Men. It's to develop a partnership in our community, so our students have programs to participate in that empower them, that are positive, so that they're not in a situation where they could be, subject to temptation. So, and Mr. Grissom will be providing the board when he does his report about the programs that have been done and talk about the community programs. And then with respect to 15.3, the threat assessment, we did mention the See Something, Say Something, but we also have the program Gaggle that we talked about. We did that acceptable technology. That Gaggle talks about, it picks up words
For
to help us with that.
Yeah.
And that information can also be provided a report on that. One of the best things that the district does with this multidisciplinary threat assessment team, all the schools have got their plans and procedures. And, you all have been very well aware of some of the incidents that unfortunately occurred at our schools. And there's immediate response, and the crisis plans go into effect. And that team goes right out there as soon as something has happened. As you see, it says Director of Student Services, Protective Services, School Counseling. They respond whenever we have a crisis at our school, at any of our schools. And then we will provide documentation that there's annual training completed by district staff every year. And then the threat assessment protocol, those things are reviewed every year. And in this OE, some of these, items kind of like overlap with each other. So for example, 15.5 and 15.6 and 15.7, they all have to do with the emergency management plan. And that plan is the district plan. It's like, I think it's over 240 pages. And every year that plan is reviewed and it is updated. And then after that happens, the fire marshal, the emergency management division, the sheriff's office, they review it and help us to, improve it and to make it better. And you all are aware of some of the things that we were working with the sheriff's department and the other police departments. So we're all in sync with each other in the event that we have an emergency. And excuse me, part of Mr. Grissom's responsibilities is he has a checklist and he goes out to schools as well. He's done it in our building here, but the important thing is how vulnerable are our schools. So when he goes out, he's looking, does anybody have like a door, like put something in the door to keep it ajar so people can sneak in? Is there anything, the signs in there properly? Security, is a visitor sign in, is that being followed appropriately? Are the visitors in the hall, do they have an ID on them? And he looks for legally parked vehicles and crime reporting, the lighting, just checks those things. And as you all know, this is part of the referendum, we've really improved our safety and security with respect to our cameras. The way that we're constructing our facilities, it's much, we have more video, more cameras now, and we have more angles, and it's helped a lot when we've received our subpoenas. It collects evidence very accurately. So Mr. Grissom will present his readiness audits to you all. And then the training, this is something that Mr. Grissom works very hard on every year. We're mandated by law. We have to have trainings every year. And our district actually completes training in excess of. So it's not only for safety in the traditional sense, but it's also for, in the area where we live, severe weather drills. So hurricanes, earthquakes, winter preparedness, floods, tornadoes even, and all schools have 2 severe weather drills each school year. Again, 15-20 comprehensive training. We do the lockdown. We do the avoid, deny, defend. We have the rapid response training. Mr. Grissom makes sure that all the schools do this training every year. And it's important that people are prepared, because if we have an emergency, we have to be trained so we can react. There's not time to think. You've got to be programmed. You know exactly what to do. You have to act quickly. And again, 15.9, it's again talking about the exercises that are completed every year. And then after you have these trainings and drills, that helps you revise your school's emergency management plan. And it's very important after every one of these that you have an after action report. You figure out, what did we do wrong? What could we have done better? What can we do in the future to make this work better? That kind of thing. And then again, the EMP, it's very detailed. It's got the lockdown, evacuation, fire and arson, bomb threats, power failure, fallen aircraft, firearms on school campus, death on school property, hazardous material accident. So those have to be reviewed and updated every year. And again, like I said, we have statutory requirements for our training, but we have trainings in excess of what's required, just because we want to be extra cautious. We have an active shooter every 3 months. And the severe weather drills. And Mr. Grissom, sorry, is responsible for providing documentation. Y'all have to excuse me. so sorry.
No, I am.
It's terrible. I have really bad seasonal allergies. This happens every year. And I'm
COVID, you're
COVID.
getting tackled in the grocery store.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I try to spit it up. I'm COVID free. COVID free, booster shot, flu shot, and I don't have strep throat. All right.
So Ms. Cartlett pretty much went through the entire superintendent's interpretation of OE 15. Is there anyone that has any question that would queue up for when she returns? Okay, Ms. Boatright has a question? Yeah, why don't you just go ahead and pose the question now and we'll see.
My only issue is 15.3 interpretation. Two or
Okay.
more types of reporting technology, and we use Gaggle as one of those reporting. Gaggle's not, in my mind, does not fit that criteria. And the reason I bring it up, sorry, I just took a minute because I thought we had more time. I think it was Newberry County. They had, remember there was something that went on where people were like storming county, like the DMV demanding some sort of exemption, vaccine exemptions. And just random county offices were being harassed. And the counties put in, and schools have done it too, on devices, essentially like a location-based panic button. Where if you were in a situation where there was a fight or a shooter or something horrible happening, you could push that and it would immediately alert. Have you heard of these things?
Yes, we had a conversation about that when we were looking at our new upgrade for our security system. So that was one of the conversations. As a matter of fact, there was one that the sheriff's office was pushing for.
Because to me, when it says two types of reporting technology, one can be see something, say something, when it's just sort of passive. You know, I see an unsafe situation, I heard something I'm worried about. One is there's a critical problem and I need you to know about it. And so to me, I would rather, I'm not saying the interpretation is necessarily wrong. I don't think Gaggle is a reporting technology. Gaggle is an identifying of other things.
Okay. And since Mr. Bristol was unable to be with us today, I'm writing this down. So that would be one question for 15.3.
And I don't necessarily think it has to hold up the interpretation, because I think the interpretation fundamentally is right. I just think it's something that I would like to have the security team look at, because as a parent, I would love to have my kid have that technology on their school issued device.
Okay. An area of concern I had was just under 15.10. The second paragraph, the last sentence, it says a site for recovery in southern Beaufort County is being determined. So there are sites already determined for northern Beaufort County, but not southern Beaufort County. So you see that, Robin? It's a last sentence in the second paragraph under the interpretation. So that will be something that I will want to ask about also. Okay. All right. Right here, Robert. 15.10, right here. Okay. Are there any other hands up? Mr. Mel Campbell, do you have any questions?
No.
Okay, I think in order to keep the meeting moving along, that I will ask these questions of Ms. Cartledge. I'll let her know that our concerns. Otherwise, how do we feel about OE 15 and having a motion to, because again, this is just the superintendent's interpretation. You want to have a motion for this?
I move that the operations committee recommend to the full board acceptance of OE 15.
Superintendent's interpretation.
Superintendent's interpretation be placed upon the consent agenda. We already have that policy, so I guess I'm gonna say that.
And I think Mr. Smith seconded it.
Correct.
Sure. Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, that's yes. Wonderful. All right. ARE7, Dr. Bruder, I believe you're on finally, huh?
You muted. You muted.
Thank you. Hey, nice to see you guys. Wendy, Ms. Cartledge was going to present this. And so I don't know if we can wait for her. I'm happy to answer any questions about it that I can. I know, FOIA, as it's, a legal matter, she probably would be the best person to kind of walk you through this. But we did go through it together. So I don't know if you want to wait for her or how you'd like to do it.
Maybe we should just use this.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Bruder. I think since we've already been here 2 hours, it would be best if we did go ahead with a discussion of the use of facilities and come back to this.
Perfect.
We're gonna need a motion for that.
I don't think so. I don't think.
You already made a motion to
the
rearrange
agenda.
the agenda,
Yeah.
So we're good. Okay, so let's go ahead and we will do that, and hopefully Ms. Cartledge will be able to join us soon. Okay, so let's do use of school facilities. And Mr. Smith, this was your request, so if you would like to lead this discussion.
Well, actually, I see Mr. Outing has a presentation. Actually, I'll go ahead and let him start it off.
No, sir, I asked Ms. Cushenberry to put OS 29, which is in our manual. I asked her just to put this in board docs. This is not a presentation. So, sir, if you would please start, since you requested this topic.
Well, the question is, what is the process of using the facility at any level to every level?
Okay.
So, I will let Brandy Majors, in her old position, was in charge of facility use and has retained that in her new position as well. So Brandy, you want to run through the process?
Sure.
And then also, I would ask that. I thought Mr. Outing did that because I was going to also ask what the application looked like. Where do we have a copy of the application too that we can look at?
He can easily send you a copy of the application, but Randy, do you want to walk through the process?
Sure. So facilities use, what we typically do, I'm gonna take my mask so y'all can hear me. What we typically do is, obviously, we've got OS 29, that's our regulation that governs our policy and how we direct individuals, and there's also an OS 29R, which is the fee schedule that assigns fees for nonprofit and for-profit entities. So in general, when we have outside entities that are interested in reserving space in our schools, we will direct them to the school. That's the first phase one, to reach out to that school that they're interested in using whatever common space, such as we do not rent out classrooms or open classrooms up. Typically, it's normally our community areas like our cafeterias, gymnasiums, athletic fields. So those types of facilities, which is also stated in the policy. So that entity would be directed to at the school level first. And we do that for best practices because we want the school to be able to communicate with that interested party. If the space is available, they kind of pre-vet that organization to make sure that they can accommodate that request. And for most single-use events, the school has been given the tools that they need to draft that agreement. It's a boilerplate agreement that we use, that they can draft that agreement, put in the specific event information that they would need, and work with that entity to get all of the required forms completed, as well as the additional general liability insurance, which policy does require that they carry $1 million for general liability insurance. That is in our policy regs. So the school will work with that entity to get that certificate of insurance, to get the agreement signed, and to also have them sign the school rules and regulations governing facilities use. That's a supplemental form that has been approved that we have them sign, that has just standard language as far as what our policies are for activities that they're not allowed to do on school grounds. For example, no smoking, no drinking, that sort of thing. So once those packets are submitted, then that school has the entity sign off on that rental packet along with the school administrator. The school administrator is the approval source for all facilities use at their facility. And then once those packets are completed, then those are sent through a module that we have in School Do called FS Direct. They're uploaded into FS Direct, and then they go through a workflow process just as our maintenance work orders do. The requester will input the information in the system, and then that workflow will take them from the requester to the school administrator. And then once the school administrator signs off on those requests, then it workflows to the district office and we sign off on it. What we have been doing, because we've had so much transition with administration, new administrators, and trying to get all those workflow paths created and corrected, because there's a lot of previous administrator information, is we've been doing a lot of the requesters at the school level that handle those facilities use packets have been emailing them to me, so I can try and get the information into FS Direct. Keeping in mind, FS Direct allows us to track the information. FS Direct also allows us to notify our service providers as far as custodial and our energy manager when we need services scheduled to be covered. So if an outside entity is renting the space and they need the HVAC system on, FS Direct will automatically send notifications to those entities saying we need coverage on this scheduled date for this period of time. I'm trying to think if I'm leaving anything else out. We do ask for additional documentation if we have an organization coming in that is claiming nonprofit status. So we do ask for them to send us their 501c nonprofit certificate and or a copy of a letter from the IRS stating that they have been granted nonprofit status. Facilities use fees are collected at the school level. The district would typically, we would get involved if it was a long-term facilities use request. Because a lot of times there's a fee calculation that is based on the square footage of a space that establishes an hourly rate. And so there a large amount of time the schools need that extra support to kind of figure out how to structure the agreement, which we do provide them with that support as well. As in policy, Dr. Rodriguez and Mr. Otting are pretty much the only two designees in the school district that can waive facilities use fees. Waiver of facilities use fees is looked at on based on what that entity can provide to the school district and how they're helping our community and engaging the students, whether it be through scholarship programs or donations to the school or volunteer time, at future clinics for school-based events. So there's a lot of different scenarios that we would discuss. Mr. Otting and Dr. Rodriguez would discuss waiving fees.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Major. Are there any questions?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Mel Campbell?
So their policy is generally evolved.
Yeah,
It's not what it was 5, 6 years ago.
we had a major renovation, 2018, maybe, it was 2-3 years ago, it underwent a big change.
Okay. Because did I hear you correctly when you said that the school administrators basically are the ones that accept or deny?
So the school administration, the school administrator is signing off on the facilities use contract. Yes, sir. And then those facilities use contracts are then sent to the district office
But
for
just,
final sign off and schedule.
okay, final sign off and schedule, but if they don't sign off on it, then it doesn't come to you.
That is correct.
It ends there.
So that's what I mean,
Yeah,
that's a change right there.
That is,
Yeah, because the policies before, the superintendent was the person who, had the final say. And he could, I rented at least the Beaufort High School student, what's now called Student Cultural Center, but it was VPAC before. And every year almost for 20 years, from the time they built it up until, at the end. And most of the time we went to the principal to engage, but she always said, superintendent, and you fill out the application, send it to the superintendent, and, when it was Mr. Moss, it was easy to talk to him and get a waiver. And, even Frank got a waiver too, but it wasn't always that easy to get the waiver because the nonprofit, something with nonprofit and something that also involved the school community, so they were easy to get the waiver. But even though the custodial thing and all that part that you mentioned, that the facilitators knowing what's going to happen there and when it's going to happen, and all that's a lot finer than it had been, because many times I had to find my own custodian, which was somebody who was working there, but I'd say, hey, need you to come in this day to do some extra work. And they were paid by the district, I suppose, but also, but that's a lot different than what you explained to me just then. What you explained to me just then is a lot tighter operation. Because it's got a mark on everybody knowing what's going on. Now, oh, school's not open. I gotta call someone and say, hey, it's not open. Where can I get a key? Where can I get somebody to open the school?
Well, it still happens, I have to say.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, you got in place where it should be.
We got procedures. but
Yeah, you got procedures, but those procedures weren't there. So, okay, I appreciate it. That's basically what I'm saying, comment.
Mr. Smith?
If my memories, if my memory serves me correct, and to what Mr. Campbell is saying is that one of the things I remember us talking about last time, is when it came to this, that part of the that part of the equation is that the principals did not have the ultimate problem, because I remember before there was an issue with I think Butterfly on Hilton Head, that the principal or something was, or some club or something was basically not allowing students not allowing a couple of community members to get it. And so it would stop at the principal level. And I thought that we wanted to have it to be universal, that it would stop at the district level and in terms of no or yes. And I'm not really, that's kind of not what I'm hearing. To me, that's not what I'm hearing. And I don't see where that was implemented. The last time we met about this, there was concern that the principals had too much authority over this and that it could be stopped at the principal level. And I thought we did not want it to be stopped there, because we thought that the district should be the one who would be saying, no, you can't, or no, you couldn't. So I'm a little confused, and maybe I'm not sure, Mr. Scrimmage, I'm not sure was he on the committee. Then I think it was probably he and I and Mr. Mr. Dowling, yeah, Mr. Dowling. So and that's what I remember hearing. I remember saying that would take place. So I'm a little concerned about that, because I know, and that was not just on the Hill, that was in several areas. People have been saying how hard it was to get to schools, and that if the principal did not have interest in what you were doing, that they were not allowing certain people to get the facilities. And so I'm a little disappointed today to hear that that's kind of still the leadway in what we have in terms of ranked facilities. So I'm concerned about that. And as well as I still think that the onus of bringing these facilities should be at the district level, so that the district knows exactly what's going on and who's in what building. You know, I think that the facilities office should definitely know that, and definitely put their stamp on it. Well, and I guess it was said that, but the final stamp should come from the district office. And also, can you tell me, you were talking about the waiver? Can you tell me where it says that what reasons why that the waiver, and who could, where is that spelled out? Basically, where is it spelled out the reasons for waivers that the use would be waived, and also who would have the final approval of the waivers? Could you tell me where I can find that information at?
So, Mr. Audin?
Let me look up what the waiver is while we're.
Yeah, I'll do.
I'm gonna answer your first question about the principals and whether the district office is the last stop. Please be aware the district office is the last stop. And we did have that conversation previously. I know you were a part of that. Mr. Strivinger was a part of that. And one of the things that we've stressed with our principals, and you'll find it located as an item in here under Section C 1F, is that the principal for the individual school, the requested should approve all reasonable requests to school facilities. And then it lists reasons why, how they may deny it. And so it's things like the application's incorrect, the fee is not paid, the application's unable to provide insurance, they violated any of the previously. So, I mean, what we did is had stricter policies on when the principals were allowed to deny it. It had to be, and they had to be consistent for that. The district is still the final say, but the school level has to say whether it's available or not, because they're the ones that know the schedules and the uses and things of that nature. And so I just want to talk about that as far as we have stressed that, and we're making sure that the schools aren't varying on how they're doing their denials of use. So were you able to find it?
I haven't found it yet.
All right, and then I'll look and find where, if you have any other questions, you can ask that. I'll try to find where it states about the waivers.
So,
Use
Sorry,
for public meetings is without charge.
usage fee, so B, under B, usage fee. Number 1, the fee set forth,
Oh,
page 2.
1B, 2.
B, 1, yeah, 2 of 7. Usage fee, B.
That's a first bit.
Yeah.
All right. So, Ms. Smith, yes, they were able to find it. So if you can find on page 2, which is actually section 3, item B, fee set forth shall apply to the use of all school facilities by nonprofit organizations where approximately equal to the cost of using the facility. The superintendent and or his designee may waive the fees and charges if, in his or her opinion, there is good cause to do so and serves a legitimate public purpose.
And have we defined? Well, I'll leave that. I'll leave that. And okay, and also, so let me ask you. Go ahead. Go ahead.
We pass a legitimate public purpose, and as Ms. Major said earlier, our common request when anybody wants to waive fees is what is the value to the children of the school district? We have things like theater camps, and they will let us know that they will provide 5 scholarships worth $1,000 a piece. So we'll say, okay, that's a $5,000 value. We can waive up to $5,000 worth of fees for that. So we ask them to provide a value to the children of Beaufort County School District. And if they can show any kind of value, we'll credit that towards their fees. That's our standard approach to it.
Is it always dollars?
No, we have to equate it, it could be some kind of time that we then equate some kind of dollar, because the fee is $1, so somehow we have to convert, if it's a time donation, we have to convert it to some kind of dollar. We
I
come,
understand.
we come
your
to an
position,
agreement.
but I'm saying we ought to be thinking about educational value in terms of dollars then.
No,
You know what I'm saying? I mean, it always clear cut dollars as opposed to what support does it do educationally to our children, and can we measure that in dollars?
Well, but the only thing I
Now, the
recognize,
reason I'm saying that because what I was doing had no scholarship offer. But it was a program relative to community concerns and community, involvement and kind of historical significance. And I felt like all of the children could benefit from it along with staff. But they, when it comes to how much that's saving the child or how much are you offering in scholarship, I have a dollar value for that.
so what
But the principal does understand the significance of enhance her educational offering. So that's what I'm asking. I don't expect you to have an answer for that. But
well, no, I mean,
saying it's a
it's
dollar.
situate, I don't know exactly what you're providing.
Yeah.
What we'd ask you first would be, are you charging the students?
No, it wouldn't be a charge
So
at
if
all.
you're not charging the students, and are you a for-profit organization?
No, non-profit.
Are you doing it as a school-based organization? Are you doing it as a
Not a
school?
school-based organization, but just as an educator.
Well, I mean, if you were just
Yeah,
doing an after-school type program, if you weren't charging anyone, like there was no proof that you're using. the
This is once a year.
If you're not, then we would probably waive all fees, but require you to provide insurance.
Yeah, that's what you did.
Yeah, I mean, so that's
That was-
because you weren't charging.
Right.
And if it's a school-based function in any way, then there's no, they don't even have to go to the facility.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
process.
Yeah, yes.
Mr. Smith, you have another question?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, he just drove into my next question. So for instance, when a teacher wants to use the facilities, what's the process that they use if they're having something there? And is there an application for them to fill out something?
So a teacher, or let's just say any school staff or anybody associated with the school district, we'd ask their purpose and if it is a function of the school. So if the teacher is using it as some function in her school, then she would not even need to do the facilities use process. It'd be allowed as a school thing and covered. Let's say the teacher wants to do an after-school yoga class. It would be very similar to Mr. Campbell's scenario. We'd ask, are they charging? And we've had this done before where they said, no, we're not charging. We just want to get together with friends or whoever and do an after-school yoga class. Then we would still require them to provide insurance, but we'd probably waive all fees if they weren't charging anything.
All right, Ms. Bilbray?
So I have waiving all fees for a yoga class, just because I know that there's HVAC fees, there's custodial fees, there's I don't want, I had the same problem Mr. Campbell had, and I think he and I ran into some of the same roadblocks of just trying to get, for something for the kids, nonprofit in the schools, and there's a lot of runaround. So I think we should make that a streamlined process. I'm a little hesitant to come on the record and say, as long as you're doing something good and you're not charging anything, you can use the facilities. We'll waive all the fees, because there's gotta be some standard, right?
Well, the difference there would be, are you doing it 4 o'clock out on a school day, or are you doing it on a Saturday?
Right,
If you're doing it on a Saturday, we're not gonna waive those fees
or
because
7 o'clock, or.
we're having to turn the air conditioner on, we're gonna have to have custodial possibly come in, so all those will be charged.
Right.
But if you were doing it at 4 o'clock on a Thursday right after school, the air conditioning is already on, then we may, and the custodial's already in the building, we may waive this. So I mean, that's kind of this, if there's an actual cost to we're not trying to make money on those fees. What we just want to ensure is that any of the use of the building is paid for by the person using the building. If there's extra use beyond a normal school day.
Well, I think in areas like Bluffton and Hilton Head where there, space is a premium, you gotta be careful too about how much use those buildings get and what purpose, because if you start just letting it, if you detach it from benefit to the students, you could end up with a free community center that, you know, so anyways, I was just saying, when you said we waive all fees, I don't think it should be quite that simple. But you're right, 4 o'clock, benefiting the kids free, that's different than 7 o'clock yoga class that you're not charging.
Right. Mr. Smith, another question?
Yes, ma'am. Also, so when the superintendent do town halls, does he have to fill out an application?
No, that's a school-based, that's a district-based function. So any district-based function does not even need to consider facility. Anything that's done by the school district or the schools themselves doesn't even consider facilities use. The only thing they may consider is we ask them to reserve the space so that we know that it's taken. That would be it. Is they need to put in, we do ask schools to put in some of their use of their functions. So if somebody tries to look to see if a space is available, they know, oh, the superintendent's holding the town hall there, that space is not available.
So what about if a board member wants to have a meeting with their constituents? Then what's the process for that? Because so that would be the same process as a superintendent, correct?
That is incorrect. So an individual board member is an individual person. They're like anybody else in the public. If the board as a whole endorses or sponsors the event, then it's a board event and there are no fees, there are no requirements. You're a board district sponsored event, but any individual board member would be like anybody else in the public. And one of the things of this conversation that's kind of come up before is that if we allow individual board members to use spaces, but say you're in an election that year and you want to meet with your constituents and it could be considered campaigning, do we allow everybody running against you to also use those spaces because they're also campaigning? So we don't want to go down that slippery slope. So if the board,
that's far. I think that's too.
Excuse me, Mr. Smith, if you'd allow Mr. Otting to finish, please.
So if the board supports the use of the individual board member, in other words, the board endorses it, then yes, it's completely allowed. Without board endorsement, then it's not a board sponsored event and it is like anybody else in the public.
I think that we're talking about two different things, Mr. Otting. And also, where can we find that interpretation? Because if a board member is the actual trustee, then help me understand how do we come to that conclusion? Because of the fact that you're meeting with your constituent and that's a part of your duties. And I see where the county council they use the facilities and they have community meetings and their different facilities. So I'm trying to figure out where's that written at and where's that interpretation coming from?
So like I kind of said, if an individual board member went to the board and said, I'd like to hold this event and I'd like it to be considered a board event, I'd like to meet with my constituents, and the board votes on it and says, yes, we agree with that event being a board event, then you are like a trustee and it can.
All due respect, you did not answer my question. Where what you're saying, where is that interpreted at in writing? Because I'm the problem I have with that is that where it seems like that's a personal preference that whoever that maybe you have or how you see it, but that as a board member, that's not how I'm understanding it. Because if you're a board member and you have the right to serve your community, then my question here is, what's the difference in you having a community meeting? Because the meeting is not the meeting is not just in benefiting of you. You're meeting with your constituents and seeing what's going on. So that is a board. That is the function of the position. So I'm trying to specifically understand what you're saying. Where can I find that in writing of that interpretation? Because we can't make up interpretation as we go along and say, well, this is how I see it. Where is that spelled out at?
So, Mr. Smith, while Mr. Otting, Ms. Major are getting their answer, I'd like Ms. Robine to speak. You have a question, Ms. Robine?
Yes, I'd just like to note that when I have held meetings with constituents, with my county council partner, we have never done it at county council. No, you know, we've always used a library. And he's not suggested that we've had it anywhere else. And I guess I would look at number 6, use for public meetings and hearings. It seems to talk about local units of government there. So you might just want to, and that applications to hold public hearings may be submitted in writing to the superintendent's office. But when I read that, I interpret it as a unit and not an individual. But
On page 4, number 6.
Where do you see number 6? What's number 6? Can you be more specific?
yeah,
Page 4,
page 4, top of the page.
and Ms. Cushenberry has it on the screen.
This is unit of government or agency. It's not say individuals.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It says a unit.
So if I can, I mean, this is one thing, if the board, that is yes, that is my being the designee over this policy's interpretation. If the board would like me to take a different interpretation and they'd like to guide me on how I should receive an individual board member looking to use a facility, I will please provide me that. As a board, I'd ask you to please provide me guidance on how that should be interpreted.
Good, I think that that's a good resolution to end this conversation, that it could be brought up in front of the full board as far as the interpretation of that. So Mr. Smith, since you asked for this, how does that sound to you? Mr. Smith? Okay.
I do think that we should bring this up to the board. This time I guess I can. I do think that we should bring this up to the board.
Okay, I think that was a good suggestion, Mr. Otting. So when we bring up the operations committee report at the next board meeting, we can bring this up at that time. Ms. Boatright?
And I don't know, is Mr. Stribinger still on?
It doesn't look like, yeah.
It is my understanding as a relatively new board member, still playing the newbie card, that we are not supposed to look at AR. What is the criteria for us adjusting?
They're
Feedback.
presented for information.
But are we supposed to direct people to change ARs? I just thought that was a policy. I'm not saying what I know.
Well, I mean, so what
Get the coherent
I would, let me start by answering Mr. Smith's original question. He asked where.
Okay, we can't hear. We can't hear.
It asks, where does it state in policy? And all I'd say is item 2 on page 1 is used by school-related organizations. And nowhere in there does it list, the board itself is a part of the district. So they don't even have to request it. They're a school-based organization. But we do not list anything about individual board members. And that's my interpretation. Mr. Smith, it's not clearly spelled out to me. I'd say that. I am interpreting it as what I see this says. And so in my mind, he's questioning that interpretation. So I really need guidance from the board, is in my mind. It's not, and it would require an adjustment to the AR. So really, what I'm giving my interpretation of what I think the AR says, the board is questioning, or individual board members are questioning that interpretation. So I think that needs to be addressed by the board so that we can adjust the AR to meet the board's intent.
The only reason I bring it up is I was told when I started very, very firmly and specifically that we do not as a board change, interfere with ARs.
Right.
So if we do talking about this interpretation, I think we need to be conscious of the fact that we're not supposed to direct you to change the AR. I don't know how that works, and I might be wrong. I mean,
so I think where you'd either through policy or through just discussion, talk about how you feel the board's members need, you need individual rights to use schools. I mean, that you could put it in your board policy or just direct the superintendent. What you're gonna do is direct the superintendent to not even specifically touch this JR, but direct the superintendent to allow board members to have use of school facilities without charge or with anything.
To our policy, not to the AR.
Well, you could do it to policy. You could make a policy change. That could be one way to address it. Or as a board, you could direct the superintendent to take that action.
And we have a few pictures. Mr. Earl Campbell?
Yes. Every meeting I have in the past with my county council member, we have it at our community centers in each community, or a county building like at Burton Wells. But we have never had a meeting at a school unless, now I've went to PTO meetings and talked to people. You could do that. But as an individual board member, then who's going to be responsible for cleaning the school once you leave? That's something.
Use it for.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. So I think that what we have,
Also,
excuse me, Mr. Smith, I'm speaking right now, please.
okay, no problem.
Thank you, sir. I think that what we have gleaned from this conversation is it requires more conversation and discussion. So again, my plan would be to bring this up during our committee report and ask the board for their thoughts on this. Is that amenable to the committee?
Yeah, can I make one more comment?
Please, yes, and then Mr. Smith, one more, and then we can move on.
I recognize that this is a little bit picky, and I also recognize that I may be wrong because I haven't had a lot of experience, but I do think that we need to be careful how we open up getting into ARs in terms of when you bring it up. I just want to make sure that I understand and that we understand the process and what our limitations are, because if we start with this one, I don't necessarily think that will be the only AR the board will want to reinterpret.
So in your problem. If I could speak.
Okay, Mr. Smith, Ms. Cartledge is going to weigh in here. She's the one speaking next.
I'm going to, under, board superintendent relationship, B/SR5, superintendent accountability. Number 8, the board directs the superintendent to provide all proposed administrative regulation changes to the board for review and input.
Right,
So the board doesn't approve them, but
Right.
we present them for review and input. So
Okay.
you're right. Okay.
All right, Mr. Smith?
Only thing I was gonna say, I didn't have a problem. I didn't have a problem with what she's saying about the AR. I can concur. I think it would be. It could also be along the line of a policy. But here recently, we did have a meeting at St. Helena Elementary School, and we all were there, the county councilman and everyone, and we had the meeting at our school in different areas. We did have a meeting at St. Helena Elementary School here recently. So and in terms of other people not having one, I do that we did have one at St. Helena, and it was successful, and we did have a crowd. So this is having. I'll just leave it there. Yeah, I think that I have no problem with Ms. Friedrich is saying. Yes, I think that the board should weigh in on this, and that we should have a board discussion on this.
Okay, Mr. Otting, I appreciate that suggestion, and I think that's what we'll do. Okay. All right, thank you very much. Our last topic for today is ARE7. Correct?
Yes.
Yes, ARE7, Ms. Cartledge and Dr. Bruder.
Yes, thank you, board members. I've been going through the board policy manual and operational expectations, and I'm going to be updating these administrative regs. So the board has OE16, I believe is correct, OE16. Excuse me, right here. So OE16 is the FOIA operational expectation. So this change, this administrative regulation discusses what's required in FOIA to make an information request, as well as complies with board policy, because you'll see in Roman numeral 2C, the BCSD posts FOIA requests and responses that include a log of FOIA responses. It has the name of requester, the date, average number of days to respond, amount order to respond, amount charged to respond, subject to the request, reason for denial. And that is in compliance with OE 16, number 1, and number 2 is a number. In D, the superintendent shall ensure the request response are tracked by the calendar year and reported quarterly in an annual report to the Beaufort County Board of Education. And then the second part about communication with the public. The board has an OE 10 about communication with the public, and Dr. Bruder is going to ensure that the community is informed and that the board is informed, and then the annual report, the sites that OE for the communication with the public. So we're just trying to update the administrative regulation, and appreciate Dr. Bruder's assistance. Thank you so much, ma'am. And at the end, the new governance manual sites are new.
So, Ms. Cartlidge, you're bringing this forward to us for information purposes. This is an AR. Is there anything in here that changed?
So I had a lot of it's changed because
it's been 20 years.
Because it's over 20 years and it's
20 years
old, and the FOIA has been, established, has been
Right.
revised. So this is to bring up to the public,
Excellent.
up to the present time, but also to be in compliance with your policies. So.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I just noticed that it was adopted
Yeah.
in 1 and hasn't
I know.
been revisited until 21.
And Dr. Bruder and I were going over some of the other ones. We're going to be updating those to the present time. Like there's now an internet.
Got it. There's that one in there.
Yeah.
Okay,
There's
Mr.
social
Smith,
media.
you've got a question?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay, okay. All right, well, Dr. Bruder, I know that you have hung in there with us through this entire meeting. I don't see any questions about this AR. We certainly do appreciate your work and Ms. Cartledge's work on bringing us 20 years into the current time with FOIA. And FOIA is a really very, very important way for our community to get information they feel they need, but we want to act within law. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah, all right. So I believe that is the end of our agenda, that we have covered everything. And
Would you like a motion to adjourn?
I think we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
Great, all in favor? Aye. Everybody, thank you very, very much for your 3 hours of work. Appreciate it.